Welcome to 50/50 Books, the book review podcast where the books are split in two and figuring out just what is going on is a toss-up. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Jonathan. This episode we're reading If Tomorrow Doesn't Come by Jen St. Jude, up to the chapter titled 6 Months to Impact.
Which was lucky because we didn't get a previous 6 months to impact. I hadn't realized they weren't actually titles. So
Me neither, until we started getting, how many 9 days till impact did we have? It's a little difficult to track down where you are in this book, especially as an audiobook listener. Like, man, I can't just be like page 42. I have to be like the third time there's 9 days left until impact. I really am pushing and encouraging publishers, editors out there to give some chapter numbers to these books,
honestly.
It's driving me crazy. I would say maybe we can do a little vibe check on our halfway point right now. I feel like I've been enjoying reading the book. I don't think anything has been like, what's the word? Super revolutionary in it yet, but I think just as a reading experience, it's been enjoyable so far.
Yeah, I'd agree. I do want to reiterate trigger warnings are in the description for this. The author actually has them on their site because it does deal with suicide. It does deal with some religious bigotry and trauma and all of that heavy stuff. So, if you read the book, you know, but some people will listen to this without reading the book. So just so you know, we will be talking about those things.
It'll be impossible to discuss this book without that.
Right. For me, I have also been enjoying it. I don't know. I feel like it's been a lot heavier for me than it has been for you based on how we've communicated. But I think it's just because the mixture of suicide and the religiousness going on, it's a lot for me, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm excited to see maybe where our opinions might actually rub against each other in this episode. I do feel like I have a certain angle that I come into a book like this from as someone who grew up in a very religious family. And there's that part of it, and then there's also the part of it where I have lost someone to suicide not too far in the past, and I think come into this book a lot differently than I would have before that happened. But it just feels a little bit different than I expected from that, because just about every time suicide comes up in literature or on TV or something like that, it does feel a lot heavier than it used to. But this book, I think, has felt a little bit more comfortable than other things. So maybe that's why this will feel a little bit different for me. I think the way that this approached it feels maybe a little bit more digestible than things I've seen in the past.
Interesting. Okay. For me, it's I am agnostic, and I have been basically my entire life. And philosophically, I'm an existentialist, so there's not a lot keeping me tied down. So religion for me is just, it's infuriating to a certain degree. As somebody who does study it and mythologies as, not intensely, but I do. And especially in our political climate, it's just a lot for me to deal with. So it's just part of it is very frustrating to read this book. And for the suicide factor, there's a certain lack of feeling that is very dangerous, I think, for me to read about, because I have been exceedingly close to this experience.
Yeah. So
I'm in obviously a much better place now. I don't think about running myself off the road anymore, but some of it, I think I'm thinking what would I do in this scenario if I was Avery? And damn, we're looking similar here. So
well, it's funny you say that. So I do think we've maybe already kind of pinpointed a major difference coming into it, right? Having experienced losing someone to suicide and having suicidal ideations in the past, those are two different experiences, that we'll be addressing this book with, right? So one thing I think that you just said that reminded me something of the book, though, was reading the reasoning why Avery was feeling this way, feeling a bit hopeless and not wanting to live anymore, and thinking, on the one hand, some of the things that were mentioned, they might feel simple, I didn't do well in this class, but that you kind of look at you can see it as a domino effect thing, or just the conglomeration of things that she's experiencing, and just even the fact that she's in college and that is the big thing she's supposed to be doing, and she was supposed to be successful. She has kind of family pressure, but also like these self-imposed pressures to do well and not screw up. And I'm like, man, like thinking about how heavy those things felt to me when I was in college or in high school, and like I felt like school was like the end all be all. Like I could relate to her to her lack of desire to continue on in the situation that she was in, not to mention like her all the other things we're going to learn about her in the later parts of the book with the religious part and sexuality and kind of unrequited love, and there's just a lot. So I could understand where she was coming from, which I understand then why it makes it kind of a scary thing to read.
Yeah. I have no further thoughts. Yeah. I agree.
Well, we can get into it, though to say we haven't already gotten into it is probably false, but we can start off. I mean, the book starts right away with Avery wanting to commit suicide. It's like early in the morning. Apparently, she's off at the lake on campus. I believe lake, right?
I think it's like a river, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, or a river. So she's kind of wanting to take after her aunt and will go in the water and never return.
And I'll say she doesn't just want to. She has done all of the steps leading up to a suicide attempt. She has written the letters. She's like picked a time that would be good. Like she's done the planning part of everything, which is, you know, the dangerous part. So would she have actually done it? Who can say? There is like statistics of, I think it's most people regret obviously their attempts, but
yeah,
would she have walked into the river? Don't know. We'll never know, I guess.
Yeah, that's an interesting question too, just because she has such regret about jumping into her neighbor's pool.
Yeah, but of course that is not necessarily a regret in the fact that she was going to die, because she didn't understand what that meant. It was a regret in she was immediately told by her mother that she will now go to hell for, attempting to kill herself. And that's followed her entire life. So thank you, Mom.
Sank in as a trauma for sure.
Yes. Which is kind of like another, we can get into this more, but why continue to live and think your life has meaning when you're going to go to hell anyway, no matter what?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. So as she's thinking about attempting this, she is interrupted by, first, I think, the campus alarm system telling everyone that something big is happening and everyone needs to wake up. And I don't think they give direct messaging, but eventually, they go into classrooms, start watching news feeds, and apparently a large asteroid is going to run into Arizona in about a week and a half. I think Cass tries to call her during this as well, and that is part of why.
Does call her.
Yeah. But does she actually get to talk to her? I'm forgetting.
Yeah, because Cass is like, promise me I'll see you at home. And Avery is like, I promise. And it's like, is that a lie at this moment? Who can say?
Right. It seems to kind of give her a little spark of like, maybe I should hold off,
And she finds little bits of that throughout her entire like journey process. She really sticks by her roommate, who ends up just coming along entirely because she can't get home to Nigeria. So
I honestly didn't call that's what was going to happen at first with them.
I know. I didn't realize Aisha was going to be such like an important character. Not that I'm upset about it, but I wasn't sure if it was just like the roommate you don't really talk to or get along with, that kind of scenario.
Yeah, that's the vibe it was giving, yeah.
Yeah, but they actually seem to be quite close friends. I mean, Aisha got a letter, so...
Though I get that. It's your roommate,
Yeah. But it makes sense. Like, when you're in that kind of headspace, you need small things to keep going every single day. And they can be as silly as you want. I mean, this one isn't as silly. It's the end of the world.
Right.
But,
So, in the process of trying to leave campus, which everyone is trying to do, like right away, Avery and Aisha both go to Boston together, which is where they're supposed to meet. Well, where Avery's supposed to meet Cass. Aisha's wanting to fly out of Boston, which ends up not happening. And Dr. Tally also comes along in this ride. So they meet up with Cass, and it seems unlikely that Aisha's going to be able to go anywhere, or that Dr. Tally's going to be able to go anywhere. So they're all coming to kill Kenny because Avery said so.
So
and this is
weird.
where our group kind of establishes itself.
Aisha, I think, makes sense, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is she gonna do? Swim to Nigeria? Like,
Right.
it's not happening.
Yeah.
Dr. Tally and his dog, there are scenes that he's in, apparently, and he just won't say a single word. And I'm like, was he there or was he not? His involvement in this whole process is so strange, especially because Avery is convinced he hates her because she, like, was quote unquote lazy in his class. Really, she was depressed, but whatever.
Yeah. This is just about the only part where I think there's anything to take from it, in that, like, I think the one observation I made about that is it's funny how the world can be ending and you still care about the fact that you failed this guy's class.
Honestly.
And I think it's something about, like, that gave me this idea of, I felt like there were other things too that I can't think of off the top of my head right now, where there seems to be a point that humans will continue to engage in the mundane even when, like, crazy world ending things are happening, because I do think that's true. I think petty drama still ends up mattering, and things like this just they still feel big even when something bigger shows up.
Yeah, I think Avery is also kind of a special case because she kept so much of her college life a secret from her parents.
Mm-hmm.
And if she can kill herself, then everybody will speak highly of her. It'll be no problem. She'll leave behind this, like, golden view of herself to her parents, which is kind of what she wants, right?
Yeah.
But if she's alive and she has to stay alive, and now she has Aisha and she has Dr. Tally, that is just too many opportunities for her parents to realize she's failing college, she's queer and doing things about it, not just queer, but actually, like, engaging in queer activity, and she's, depressed and she wanted to kill herself and all of these things. Like, it's important to her because she's not supposed to be here in this moment, and this version of herself is somebody that nobody really knows about, and she's trying to maintain that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah.
I do also agree with you. I think kind of living through the pandemic kind of showcased that. Like, we were supposed to be quarantined, but you'd have to go out and you'd see people just, like, driving around. It's like, where are you going? And they're just, like, continuing to do the same shit they always did. It's like, why? Why?
Well, and in fact, people ended up antsy for it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, she does mention too, just like, oh, like, I just feel like in order to keep me going, I need to do something, and the something I'm going to do is just help people in this time. So I guess that's her claim on what it is, which I could see that a little bit too, but
yeah, because she can't exist for herself.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, she doesn't think herself is worth anything, but if she can help other people, and if she can maintain who she's supposed to be in front of her parents, like, that's existing for other people. And it's not, I mean, the helping people part in small batches, that's good. Like, help people, that's fine. But she's got a lot. She's got a lot going on.
This is one step farther for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like we're giving some realistic reasons Dr. Tally might be here, but not literary ones. And so I'm interested to see where in the second half of the book, if Dr. Tally will have kind of more of a purpose.
Yeah, at first I thought Tally was going to, and this might still happen, Tally was going to be like a mentor figure, which could still happen because he apparently goes to therapy, which, good for you, King. And he might...
He was like, I was taking a morning walk.
Right. Also, Hermes mention, oh my god, Hades too. Anyway. Him, like, going to therapy, obviously having some mental health issues, I'm assuming. I mean, everybody should be in therapy, but I'm assuming here. Him taking kind of a mentor role for Avery and, like, helping her out in that way would give relevance to his character.
Right.
Because right now, the only reason he's there is to call out Avery's lies.
Yes.
And I feel like that's not necessary because Avery can't lie for shit anyway.
Right. The constant panic.
Right.
I just feel like he's also not positioned himself to be a mentor. It's giving a little bit like this almost feels extreme. Like I was going to say like a Snape, where it's like there's like someone who seems like a bad person but has something to offer. I think this is not that level of extreme, but he does kind of come off as an asshole and like not putting himself in an ingratiating position to the other characters. So I can't see how something he would say, even if enlightening or wise, would impact the characters.
Yeah, I think it's also not helped because he just seems so pretentious.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Because he doesn't do anything bad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess you could maybe the way he talks to Avery about her class performance
Oh, yeah, yeah,
was it
yeah.
left something to be desired, you know?
He definitely hates sports kids.
Yeah, like there was definitely some bias.
It's true.
I kind of wanted to entertain what we think would really happen in a situation like this. Like if we think this is a good, accurate description of what sort of mess would go down. And I think important context here is that the United States president in this book says that the information was leaked ahead of when they wanted to announce it with the sort of precautions that they would have wanted to announce it with. So do you think it would be like this total shit show in the cities and like immediate panic, looting, and all of this stuff?
I would just like to say, first of all, leaked with 9 days left. What exactly was the president preparing?
I know, what are we waiting for?
Right. Are you going to tell me a few minutes before it happens? What's the deal here?
Yeah.
But for us, we are East Coast. So, like the parents think, there is the possibility we would survive into a long winter. But also by the sea, entirely possible we would just be flooded and drowned to death. So that's great.
Yes, yeah.
I have always had a pretty clear idea of what I would do in situations like this. Zombie apocalypse, end of the world, all this kind of nonsense. I wouldn't deal with it. Take me out. I don't care.
Mm.
What am I staying around for? I guess, like, I have no useful skills. I write books, but who cares, right? Like, you don't need me, and I don't want to deal with it. Sorry.
Yeah, I get that. It's like a version, the version of society that's going to come from that is not one that you feel aligned to.
Right. Like, check back in 5 years, but right now I have, like, nothing really going for me. So, I don't know. If I had a family, like, if I was in Peter's position, that would probably change, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm chilling. I don't know. And is that, like, romanticizing suicide? Sorry. I'm being realistic. I don't know.
Yeah, I get that.
And yourself?
Yeah, so for me, I'm skeptical that it would be just as crazy as they're describing it here, but maybe that's naive of me. I think I'm in an interesting position living like a few hours driving away from home in the where I grew up since and like where my family is, and also like it isn't like I don't think it would be very easy to move. Like they're able to drive from New Hampshire to Boston, and I know that they talk about like gridlock in the city and like having to like ride on vans, and like I think that is wishful thinking. I think that's the part where it's underselling it. I think gridlock would be way beyond cities. I don't think things would be moving. I think everyone would basically have to be on foot, which really would complicate me going home because that's 100 miles of walking. You know?
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. The traffic we deal with on a regular basis is already bad enough. In a scenario
Exactly.
like this, everybody is going to feel like they need to move somewhere for some reason. So, yeah, it would be absolutely locked down.
Yeah. And even like I'd be even skeptical of taking a train if they were still running. I'm also skeptical that the trains and planes and buses would be running too. That might also be more on the accurate side because those people would also want to make a decision about their lives. So, but I would, even if I didn't think the cities were going to be quite as bad as what this book is claiming, I probably still wouldn't want to go into another one. Like I wouldn't want to take a train to Philly, you know?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So,
cities are. Oof.
Yeah, and I'm already in one too. So I'm just like, maybe staying put is really the answer. And like I have a partner and stuff too. Not that he'd be trying to go anywhere else probably, but like there's something keeping me here too.
If you have 9 days, at the very least, you need to kind of chill a couple of those days for everybody else to freak out because people will freak out.
Exactly, yeah. And I do think it will die down after the initial mess.
Right.
I do think there are some things that probably would keep going. Like I do think I'm maybe not 100%, but I do think it's realistic that things like TV and radio would continue to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And like emergency services, just because I think people would be moved to keep doing those things, even if it's not all of the people who do it, but enough of them to make it happen. And like probably like so at least some government official, I assume like the president would keep presidenting, you know, things like that. So
yeah, I mean, it would still be exceedingly dangerous, I think, to go anywhere because we get gunshots that go off in this book and like blood, like a lot of blood that shows up mysteriously. So there's obviously people acting foolish. or taking the opportunity to do crazy things.
Yeah, it's interesting. As a concept, it was already an interesting book, right? Like someone's trying to commit suicide, but then the world decides it's going to end anyway, right? And I think there's something interesting about that with regard to the average character, like the average person in this book who's not named, just a citizen of the world. Like now, kind of having to confront something similar, but instead it's thrust upon them, right? Like now it's not like no one's making a choice about death. I mean, unless they decide before then, but like this isn't choosing that the world's going to end in 9 days. It's like now you know the world's going to end in 9 days. It doesn't matter if you have the will or desire to live. It's done. How does that change your perspective of the world and the actions you take? And I think that's where the sort of messier things come from. That's where you get people acting out and maybe even doing violent things because you don't have to consider a will to live or consequences anymore. The world's going to end anyway.
Yeah, and I think we have characters that kind of, not the violent part, but kind of showcase those different ways to handle the situation. Avery, obviously, is surviving for other people at this point, and she's put a limit on herself anyway. So it's not like she doesn't personally care too much how everything goes. Aisha wants to get back to her family, and she wants to survive for her family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably in part because her family's in Nigeria, so their impact, unless there's another asteroid coming, is going to be lessened. So they'll probably be fine, I would assume. And she has already lost a sister, so she obviously doesn't want to put her family through that again. And she's not depressed. Well, she's seemingly not depressed. So she must have aspirations in regards to being alive. So that's her entire focus. Like, she buys into the bunker so hard because it is a necessity for her to survive this.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cass is, everything is going to end in 9 days. Let's live in the moment.
Right.
Who cares about preparing? Who cares about any of that? I just want to live now. And that's why she's taking risks and not being as intense about gathering supplies and all of this stuff. So we kind of get like different aspects of that reaction, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a good point. Aisha is so like, I need to take this flight. I need to get to Logan, right? And it takes some processing time for her to realize that that's not the case. But right towards the end of this half that we read, you do see her put in kind of that same energy she originally had into the bunker, because she does seem to have quite the drive to get back to her family. I do think it's interesting to think about the dynamic too of her family being in Nigeria, like that they are in such a better position, because Aisha's like, oh, like I really need to like call my family a lot and like help them. But I think that's the other way around. Like I think she's the one who needs help.
Yeah, I guess it's like help in the emotional sense. Like, I'm still
maybe.
alive.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing either of them can do from where they are.
And such a different relationship than like Cass and her parents, where her parents are like, just chill, like have a good time.
Her parents are so annoying.
It kind of explains why Cass is so like on that, though, like why she's like, I just like don't want to waste my last days. It's like I feel like she thinks she's doing a disservice to her parents by like spending all this time building a bunker instead of just like enjoying herself.
Right, because her parents are in Fiji. Obviously, they can't get back. They're kind of just like raving it up.
Yes.
With the last few days they have, and they do get to call with Cass, and they do say, we raised you to be more independent than that, because she misses her parents and she wants to see her parents. And I was so infuriated. Like, it made me think about that distinction, right, between casual, more open parents and negligence, because it is a line.
Yeah.
And like, obviously Cass does have issues with her parents. It comes up during her quinceañera about like what outfit she needs to wear, and it does bring into question like how much do her parents actually like emotionally understand her, because her father is upset about the dress because why can't you just follow tradition for once, and because Cass wants to wear a suit, and it's like, if that's what she's more comfortable in, then who cares about tradition? I'm saying this as a white person. I guess you should care about tradition, but like,
yeah, but she's engaging, right? It's not like there's not having a quince, right? Like they're already doing it different. They already decided not to do anything big and flashy and like all this stuff. Like they're still doing some of the traditional stuff in there, but it's definitely not a fully traditional quince to begin with.
Right. And they do end up compromising on the outfit, but the almost like passive way in which the father handles it, like
Mm-hmm.
as if it's a choice, as if her comfort and how she feels expressing her gender is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, because I don't understand as a parent, maybe you don't want to scare your kid and you're like, it'll be fine, we'll have fun and it'll be great and it'll be an amazing party at the end of the world and all of that kind of stuff. But why would you not fight to be with them? Like, this is your child who's still in college and hasn't lived any life, and they're going to die. Like, I could not imagine. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I get, like, I don't get the level to which they're behaving that way. Something you said also made me think about, this is kind of the reason why I don't like gender reveal things when it comes to babies, right? Because, like, I've even recently seen people I know, like, be like, oh my God, like, I can't wait to have, like, a girl to walk down the aisle one day. And it's like, whoa, like, not only are we, like, being super open and forward about revealing the gender of our child, which I already am not super stoked about, but at least that's common. The whole idea of, like, now you're also, like, planning this kid's life for them and, like, setting expectations based on that gender for you to potentially be disappointed by later and run yourself into these corners that Mr. Aguilar has run himself into.
Right, because it's like, will your daughter be a daughter by that point? Who knows? And
Who
also,
knows? Yeah.
will you even have a relationship with your daughter?
Well, especially if you're coming into it that way.
Right, like, ugh, it's just, it is expectations, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to forecast because she does bring this up. She is Hispanic and Indian, like, and
Right.
it's that struggle of, am I Indian enough? Am I
Mhm.
Hispanic enough? You don't know. And it seems like everybody in her family does love her, which is great,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a concern. Like, it's a special concern she has to go through, especially while she's trying to take part in these traditions, right?
Yeah, not only is that a real, like, pressure that people deal with when they are mixed backgrounds, but this is one that her parents can't understand. That's something that's different between them. They are not. And so they can't understand what her experience is like growing up like that, on top of the fact that she has a certain idea of what she wants her own gender presentation to be like and has a sexuality that is not in the norm, you know? So there's so many things that add up for her in a way that her parents could just never understand.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't come back up in the book.
Yeah, no, same.
I mean, that's one family. Shall we talk about the main family?
It's sure. Yeah, let's do it.
I will say, before we jump into anything crazy, reading the trigger warnings for this, obviously religious bigotry is there, but I wasn't expecting it to be the family. Foolish I am, of course, but the family comes out hard
Yeah.
with all the religious stuff they
Mhm.
put their children through. So, yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah. I think we mentioned that once already, but so Avery, her aunt, seemingly committed suicide before she was born.
Mm-hmm.
And that some of the religious rhetoric kind of already comes out about that, right? Because Avery kind of does something similar in the neighbor's pool. Like, she's like, oh, I heard, like, my aunt, like, went off into the water and never came back. That sounds like, I want to see, like, what's out there, you know? Goes into the water and, like, it starts to drown because she cannot swim, so has to be saved. And, like, not only do you immediately, of course, understand the connection that's being created between Avery and her aunt, but the religious response, right, of the, like, you know, killing oneself is, like, gonna send you straight to hell, like, it's like a major sin. And, like, just understanding, like, what has, like, she lost her mom, right, lost her sister, and this is kind of how she talks about suicide. And it's interesting to think of, like, I wonder if that's the rhetoric she was using at that time, or if that's rhetoric she learned or, like, reinforced after her sister committed suicide.
As like a way to deal with it. I mean, a
Yeah.
shitty way, but a way.
Like, and I figure to me, the implication is she probably grew up Catholic, you know, and
Yeah.
the mom I'm still talking about, and, like, has had these sorts of things taught to her whole life. So it's possible that's just what she believed and stuff. But to just, I don't know, it does feel a little cold, right? A little. It doesn't seem like it could just be like, well, this is what I know. It's like, obviously you have a personal connection to, like, someone who committed suicide. To me, it feels like there must be some extra layer behind that of, like, why you would be so, like, well, like, that is a sin, maybe just as a protection point too, right? Like, oh, maybe if I tell my daughter like this is the ultimate sin, which I believe anyway, like that'll really prevent this from happening to me again.
Yeah, I also think this is gonna sound really bad, and this is me assuming it's easy to then blame the person who's doing the thing. Like, it's easy to blame the aunt and say she wanted to commit sin, or even
Yeah.
in a more general sense, she was tempted by the devil to commit a sin. Like, and the priest kind of gets into this this idea of tempting, right?
Right.
And
Boy.
it is her sister, but when you're dealing with mental illness, what do you blame? Like, it's such a like non-distinct thing. Like, you can't there sometimes there is
You
nothing
can't
to blame.
point at it. Yeah.
Right. And so an easy way to kind of contextualize it and deal with it is to say she was tempted by something, or she was the problem. She was the evil, and so she decided to sin. And thank God that didn't happen to me. And now I can lead a virtuous life and get to heaven and all of that stuff. So, I mean, it's a cruel way of thinking to think her sister might do that intentionally because she wanted to go to hell. But I mean, I kind of think that is what she thinks. Like, that is what she tells her 5-year-old. She's like, do you want to go to hell? Like, is that what you want to do? So it feels like it's an action with intent behind it if you can just blame it on the fact that you want to sin.
You know, I get it. Honestly, that's making me understand it a little bit more, because I mean, like, you can think of it from a stages of grief point, or like just trying to find a reason, but like it's so hard, right? Like, especially if you don't, like, say, get a note or something, right? It's so hard to like logic out why something like that has happened. Like I definitely felt that with when my friend passed away, of like, why did this happen? It wasn't expected, or even if someone did expect it, it still doesn't give me the reason why. And like, either I can see the response to that being like finding a reason, finding an explanation, and also like not wanting to feel like you could have been to blame, right? I think this is a common thing too, of when someone commits suicide, is like people being like, is there something I could have done? Like, is this somehow like my fault a little bit? And like, yeah, like if she's able to do away with that by saying, well, she sinned, like she made this choice, she was tempted, yeah, totally, like I can get why you would stick to that. So like, yeah, one part maybe stuck in the anger stage, and one part, yeah, trying to find someone else to blame it on. I can understand that. Not that I'm saying it's healthy, but I can understand that.
Right. It simplifies something that's exceedingly complicated.
Yes.
But then, of course, Avery thinks she's going to go to hell basically her entire life.
Poor thing.
Yeah. She is working towards trying to fix that, and sitting with the idea that it is inevitable, which really feeds into just wanting to take her own life. So great.
Yeah, crazy how that loops back on itself.
Yeah. She does try to be like the perfect Christian daughter. Like, she takes part in camps, and she's trying to be holy and devout and all of these things, and she doesn't even really believe in God.
She like overcorrected.
And it doesn't help that she sees herself in her aunt. Avery is described as looking as identical to her aunt, and she's obviously wanted to kind of be like her aunt this entire time. I mean, depression does run in families. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. It would have been great if the family, talked about it instead of reducing it to religion, but...
This is kind of another thing I kind of think encourages it a bit, is that they've let her aunt be elusive, right? Like, she doesn't know a lot about her. They don't talk about her. She just kind of knows this thing and is like, like, that's my family. I kind of want to know more and maybe be closer to her. And so, of course, this is kind of what happens, right? And of course, yeah, she does see herself. It kind of made me ask the question of like, I wonder just how similar they were. Like, I know that her mom says like, oh, we've never had anyone gay or a priest in the family. But I was like, oh, I almost wonder if like the implication might be that, Aunt Devon was like maybe also queer, or at least experiencing some sort of confusion about that, because it was a little bit more in the past, But like, I would just wonder, we can't know unless the author says, but I kind of wonder what level of implied relation they really have.
Right, yeah. It also doesn't help that, I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, Aunt Devon kind of became almost like a beautiful story. Like, it's obviously not beautiful, but the idea of walking into the sea
Mm-hmm.
There is something picturesque and romantic about it, in the time period sense, romantic. And Avery wanting to replicate that, both when she's 5 and also when she wants to run her car into the lake, is again water. And her suicide almost attempt at the beginning of this book is also involving water. Like, she's obviously held on to that imagery so hard. So, yeah, she definitely finds a kind of beauty. And then you could probably also get into the idea of water being cleansing and like baptisms and things like that.
Oh, that's a good point.
So it makes sense, but obviously it's ideation. It's not good. So
yeah, well, yeah, it's a good point overall. Just that sort of the romanticization of it, because when they've chosen to talk about her that way, this is kind of similar to the point I was making, but when they've chosen to talk about her that way without being kind of honest and direct about what she's done, it does kind of, it gives that opportunity for the people you're telling that information to kind of almost see it in a positive or curious light instead of an understanding one.
Yeah, especially when it's children who happen to find the story, like when Peter and Avery are very young. And I mean, we read a book about a world under a lake. So it's like, yeah, fucking walk into the sea.
Right.
You might find something magical. And like, obviously don't do that.
Yeah, especially if like a 5-year-old, yeah.
To a child, yeah. It's like, why would you walk into the sea? Why would somebody kill themselves? Like, that is such, it's something adults don't even understand. And it's like, we're putting that on a child to understand who probably doesn't even know what death is, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just a lot of new information to take in. It's like, obviously you wouldn't think the worst. Like, you wouldn't think somebody wanted to go to hell. You wouldn't think somebody wanted to end their life because you're 5, you're a baby.
Yeah. It could have also, I mean, she was so young, it could have been like a one day we'll tell her thing, but she didn't wait, so.
Yeah. It's just, the response to the action is just also, I think, telling of just how much her parents would have told her. Like, instead of explaining why you shouldn't kill yourself and explaining what happened to your aunt, and instead you caused your children to fear water their entire lives, because that's what happened. Like, the parents are always like, you can't go to the beach, you can't go swimming, you can't do this. Like, they just pressed this fear, and they did that with God too. Like, classic. You should fear these things instead of understanding them.
Right.
And yeah, it just I don't think there was any scenario in which these parents actually had a conversation about the honest truth of what happened. Because I don't even think the mother, I don't know about the father, who gives a shit. The mother, I don't even think has dealt with it in a realistic setting. Realistic, I'm sorry. Faith is realistic, but like actually taking the time to process it all, I guess is what I'm saying.
She's using the faith to kind of talk it away, not to address it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think there's one point I wanted to go back to earlier too, as far as like Avery kind of realizing she doesn't believe in God, because I thought that kind of description of that process was interesting, where she was kind of like, I kind of thought God was there the whole time, but now I kind of just think he isn't, which was like, so I'll say too, like, I mentioned I grew up in kind of a religious family. I certainly am not a like church going type anymore. Not that I ever really was. That was, as with any kid, you don't have a choice over that stuff. So, but I would not say that I don't believe in God at this point. I would just say like my relationship with the whole idea is different and not rooted in like organized religion. And I think it seems like this, that it can be a little upsetting for someone like me in that position, because it kind of seems like what she really lost faith in was the church. And then when she was like, well, if I lost faith in the church, I guess I lost faith in there being a God too. And I think that kind of, I think we do, like, I think religious folks often do teach that to be one and the same, because why would they want their kid to ever leave the church? I think I come at it from the angle that like being engaged in the church and believing in God shouldn't be like entangled so tightly that if you lose one, you lose the other. And so for me, I'm like, I mean, if you feel like you don't believe in God, that's fine, but I just don't want it to be because you lost faith in the church. I want to hope for people that those are kind of separate decisions.
Right. Yeah. I think it's also an aspect of, I don't think Avery was ever taught about God in the right way. Mm-hmm. Like, this idea of hell and sin and being punished by God, like, it's all the discipline ways, right? Yeah. To teach and to basically have something else, parent your children because you don't want to. But I just don't think Avery has ever felt the love that's supposed to be associated with God. And that's why she doesn't feel anything.
That's a great point.
She hasn't. Her relationship with her parents is weird. Like, they obviously don't understand the real her, so I'm not even sure if she's ever felt the genuine love of her parents. She's felt pride from them in certain things she's done, but that pride has also been associated with things like the religious camp, like things she's forced herself to do to fit this mold. So the only person in her family I think that's truly loved her is Peter, but he obviously kind of went against the grain and did his own thing. I mean, he had his child out of wedlock and all of that stuff. So I just think her relationship with actual God is like non-existent because I don't think she ever had the chance to experience it. And also she's been surrounded by such like annoying religious people.
Yes.
Like everybody in the camp being like homosexuals are evil and like all of that bullshit. Like, why would you want to love a God that is supposedly like that? Like, she's just never had a good experience, I think. But I do understand your point, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's the part that I'm sad about, honestly, though, is like the way that churches can do that, right? Like by presenting it a certain way, by creating a certain culture about it. Like you kind of either force them to take your way or kind of push them to not take any way instead of letting them develop, you know, a relationship or an idea of what God might be and whether or not they want to engage in that belief.
Yeah, and it's like faith is hard, you know? Like it's entirely possible she'll have a moment like at the end of this book. I think it would fit feeling some kind of connection with God in like the pure sense that could happen, but it's like it's hard to find your way to something that you've like never known. Yeah.
Especially like when it's been your whole childhood, it's been a certain way, you know, and the childhood it would probably, and this is why they target it, right? But it would be probably a really good time to like start thinking about these things for yourself and kind of developing that over a long period of time. But the way religion is structured, organized religion is structured, it's kind of like it's a bit of indoctrinating, right? Like we are going to get you in while you're young, so that way you don't have to worry about it in a sense, you know. And like we know we're right, so we're going to give that to you. And I think it's even almost seen that way in like a goodwill type of thing, but it doesn't. I don't know. I just think it doesn't align with the value it should. I think people should be given the tools to kind of come to those decisions themselves, right?
I mean, complicated. Kind of reining it back into the story though before we do get too crazy. There is the part you mentioned where Avery's parents or her mom is like, we've never had a gay or a priest in this family, and that is the time Avery decides to come out as probably queer ? She's not really sure at that point, but she does know she's queer in some way.
I kind of figured she knew, she just didn't want to put a name on it. She was like, because she, you know, was kind of not given a positive response right off the bat, you know?
For sure. Yeah, I think I felt like denial still. Like she didn't want to say she was like a full-on lesbian because she hadn't quite settled on it yet. And if she's, this is going to sound really bad, but like I can say it because I'm panromantic, it's fine. Parents won't understand pansexual, so just drop that. But if you say you're bi, then you'll get with a boy and you'll marry him and you'll still have a family. And it's like, you're basically straight, quote unquote, basically straight at that point, right? Support to all the bis out there. Love you. But yeah, I felt a lot of uncertainty because bi is the easier answer.
Right.
You could still be, quote unquote, normal, but...
Yeah, especially because she even talks it down afterwards with Cass, right? Like, it wasn't even a big deal, right? Like, she was really, like, trying to reel it back.
Yeah. Because surprisingly, she doesn't have a good reaction from Cass either.
Yeah.
But
oh my god. Yeah. That's all.
Let's hold on.
Yeah.
Let's hold on. So Peter is obviously supportive of her, and Georgia is bi, so love that for her. And Avery's parents kind of just ignore it.
So uncomfortable.
Very awkward. It's so awkward. Peter is even like, she's trying to tell you something important, and they are just not caring, not paying attention. Like, obviously passing it off and thinking it's going to be some kind of phase.
Right.
And so Avery leaves. She gets out of there. She tries to go to a gay bar, which does not work out for her. Because nobody's there. It's not a gay club. It's just like a bar.
Yeah.
So slightly different
She's
vibe.
also like a teenager.
She is also a child, yes. And then she goes to the church. Where else would you seek advice than your church? It makes sense. In theory, it makes sense.
In theory, it's not wrong, but in this moment.
In this moment, it's the worst thing she could have done.
Yeah.
Does she try to kill herself before or after this?
Yeah, that part, honestly, you mentioned that in there, and I was like, oh, I kind of forgot. This is like her wanting to like drive off the road. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it might have been before.
Actually, it's before.
Yeah.
It's before. Yeah, because it's not just the being gay part that bothers her. She does think about killing herself. The only reason she doesn't is because she might hurt someone else. So already she does not care about herself. Great. And that's why she goes to the church, because it's like she's obviously unstable. She doesn't think she should be alive. She's gay. All the worst things to be. Sarcasm.
Oof, I know.
Sarcasm. I'm just putting that out there in case my tone wasn't clear.
Yeah.
So she goes to the church and she's like, surely this priest will help me and will give me good advice and everything will be okay. And she disguises it and says, my friend is queer and suicidal. My friend.
Talking about it like it's Cass, but it's her. And she seems to have way too much information on what her friend is thinking in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, the priest accepts it because Cass obviously is like out as a lesbian, so very easy target. And the priest's advice is fucking bullshit.
What's funny, I want to say before we get into this, is in the first, maybe like 1/3 or half of the conversation, I was like, this is going better than I thought. And then the second half is where it all came out. It's like, there it is. That's what I was expecting.
Yeah. Basically, the priest describes being queer and as a sin, obviously, and wanting to kill yourself is the most disgusting sin. How dare you? And this friend of yours, you should help them like Christ would, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Christ died for our sins. He must be pretty great. Love that guy. But wait.
Yeah.
You should also think of your own salvation and stop talking to this queer, depressed friend you have before they tempt you. And I'm like, okay.
Like, which is it?
Yeah, so the part where Christ literally, went on the cross with the intention of, like, saving everybody else. I guess we just ignore that part because we're supposed to be selfish here. Like, what is not clicking? Like, I don't understand. And so this only fuels Avery's justification, basically, in cutting off everybody from her life. She doesn't get close with her nephew. She doesn't talk about college. She doesn't really have friends in college, except I guess Aisha, but that's because they're roommates. You don't really have a choice. And it's like, well, I can't tempt anyone if I don't have anybody to tempt. So that only worsens her entire mental state. Love that for her. And religion, obviously, is... This religion, specifically, being discussed, I suppose, is garbage. Throw it in the trash.
Yeah, this isn't going to work for her. It doesn't work for her. I don't know who they think this is going to work for, but... The
hypocrisy drove me fucking crazy.
Yeah. It really is, like, you really hit it on the head of, like looking at it from the lens of, is this behavior Christ-like? Like, it's just not, like, you've just absolutely refuted yourself.
And in the same sentence, like, in the same bit of speech, oh my God, he was just, it infuriated me. And it's like, these are the aspects, like the suicide, obviously, personal reasons, but these bits of the book are what drive me crazy and what felt heavy to me, because it's like, people think like this. Like, people go through their life and they put other people through this. Like, it just drives me fucking crazy. Believe all that shit if you want to. Do whatever you want. But don't tell other people to do that. Don't make other people do that. Like, oh my God. If you want to listen to, like, your own cherry picking and your own hypocrisy, that's your business. But it is not mine.
It kind of brings me back to this memory. So sometimes in church, like, I had this Bible that I got in high school that was like lightly targeted at teens. It had some like extra inserts in it that like were FAQ style. It would ask a question and be like, here's like some things in the Bible that have to do with the question you have as a teenager. And one of them was just like, what about homosexuality? And I used to like just be sitting in church, like reading that page over and over again, like week to week, like trying to, I guess, like understand the point, right? Like it's like the point it was making was definitely like probably shouldn't. It wasn't like the strongest words, honestly. It could have been worse, but it like referenced some verses in the Bible, and I kind of remember just like wanting to justify, right? Like being like, but it's gonna be okay, right? Like I'm not screwed, right? Like that's kind of what this scene reminds me of.
It's just sad.
Yeah.
Like, there's like nothing wrong with believing in God, obviously. Please do have faith. It makes your life usually better. Like, if you do it the right way, quote unquote, the right way. Just not like this.
Yes.
I guess it's the right way.
Like this. I agree, yeah.
Because this idea of living for your afterlife is already broken. Like, that's already ruined Avery's entire mindset. But the fact that you feel like you can't be yourself, or that your life is already ruined because of who you are, like, that predestined bullshit, like, it just drives me nuts. It's just, it's sad. I hate it.
Yep.
Okay.
On that happy note.
So obviously, part of the issue Avery had was her queerness, and that's because she realizes she's in love with Cass. But before we get to that, this book is indeed for the sapphics, because the amount of times Avery talked about Cass and was like, we held hands and the moonlight like cut across her face just perfectly, and we're best friends, and I'm like, that's, sapphic experience for sure. And I'll explain it a little bit in case people don't understand what that means. The idea is girls, I guess. They're a lot more, they're not actually, but they're perceived as more emotional. It's more like not understood. It's more accepted within society for girls to kind of be close emotionally and physically, I suppose, as well. Because men are supposed to be tough guys who, don't cry and shit like that. Dumb shit. So it can be hard to gauge if a girl is interested or if she's just being friendly, because she could say, oh my gosh, you look the most beautiful you've ever looked, and it's like, nah, she's just a good friend. It's hard to tell. So Avery is kind of living in that. She doesn't understand her own feelings. She kind of thinks they're just good friends. But no, turns out she's gay as hell. So good for her.
If I can bring it up now, this is kind of why I enjoyed the inclusion of that movie in this book, of like Cass is like, Avery, I love this movie, like this queer like lesbian movie from 2002, and she like goes home and watches it and kind of comes back and it's like, that didn't feel gay at all. And Cass is like, no, like you really have to like look at the subtext, and she is like, well, the subtext just kind of looks like our friendship, so I don't get it. It's like, oh, come on. Too on the nose.
Cass was definitely dropping some hints.
Yeah, I agree.
They did couple costume for sure during Halloween.
Yes. My heart was like broken during the prom situation.
Oh my god, not prom.
I was like, come on, this could have worked. She could have just gone back to that kid and said, never mind.
Yeah, but Avery is a pushover.
Yeah.
And, going with the other captain looks good, so why not? But yeah, Cass did actually ask her, and of course it got passed off as like, we could have went as best friends, and it would have been great. But nah, she meant it.
No, 100%.
And Omar does kind of get on Avery for that, because he's like the gay best friend. And he thinks Avery is treating Cass like a boyfriend until she finds a boyfriend to like replace her with, whatever, because they're so close, and it's like, it's not normal. Like, the way you guys are friends is like, it's too much, if anybody can gauge that, I suppose. And he's a bit harsh about this to Avery, and he obviously assumes she's straight, which is like, okay, I guess she hasn't told you different, but again, we're assuming somebody's straight, okay, I guess. And he gets upset at her about it. It's like, she can't do anything about it. Like, if Cass isn't setting the boundaries and nothing seems to be wrong, like, what is Avery meant to do in this scenario? This only made things worse for Avery, because what do you do in response to being told that you're treating your best friend like she's replaceable?
Yeah.
Well, you stop talking to her as much. You stop caring about her as much. And obviously we know Avery kisses Cass at some point, and then they get into an argument. But there is like a bit of time when they're in college where they're not talking as much.
Right.
Which is like understood, they're in college, but also, is that also a reflection of this issue Omar is bringing up? Like, is this a reaction to her wanting to distance herself? Like, the
Right.
depression, sure, she probably does, but also...
Yeah, because he's kind of saying set her free, right?
Basically, like, yeah, let her date other people. It's like, Avery was never stopping her from...
Right.
Like, Avery cannot help Cass's feelings, especially if she doesn't understand the distinction between what best friends do and what couples do. Like, first of all, in my head, they're the same fucking thing. Like, you should date your best friend. That's the best scenario. But, like, yeah, where do you draw that line? It's also hard for Omar to say anything because he's a guy. Like, it is going to be different.
Yeah, he can't fully understand.
Yeah, but he definitely tries to, and he definitely makes Avery feel like fucking shit about it.
Yeah,
so
I understood where Omar was coming from given the assumptions he was making. The problem was in step one, though, right? It was like the assumptions he was making. And I guess I understood why he was, right? Because why would at this point you believe that if Avery was queer that she wouldn't have figured it out, said something, etc. by now, like in their senior year? I kind of understand that angle. And so given that knowledge, he's being protective, right? He's saying like, don't, you maybe don't see it this way because you're in it, but like from the outside, it feels like I can see that Cass is going to be limited by this behavior or something. Yeah, I kind of understand him like looking out for her. He definitely is a little bit like harsh about it, and is wrong in the end about what the situation is. But I was only a little bit mad at him. I feel like I could have been more mad about it.
I think it's also he did not take into consideration her family. Like, their relationship is weird because Avery says Omar isn't her friend. He's Cass's friend.
Yeah.
So Avery doesn't see them really as friends. And I don't think Omar disagrees with that assessment, to be honest. But knowing Avery's family is so religious, understand from that point of view why she might not have understood her queer feelings and why she might not even come out as much as Cass and Omar have within the school. Like, there was a lot of pressure on her, and I get she's kind of taken on this like nice girl next door energy, and it's kind of annoying when you're nice to everybody. But what is her family situation like in this moment? Like, it makes sense in context, but yeah, he is protective. But talk to Cass about it. Like, if she's fine being in love with Avery and not doing anything about it, let it go. It's not your business at that point.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too. Like, really, he should be talking to his friend who's involved in this situation. Yeah, I was having a hard time pinning down if Omar really doesn't like Avery or if it really just was like he feels like he understands what a better version of the situation would be and just wasn't afraid to say something about it. But I can't believe that as much now, thinking about the fact that he probably should have just been talking to Cass about this.
Right. And he might have been, right?
Yeah,
but
maybe.
It would make sense.
Yeah. Well, especially if they were having conversations where she was being more honest with Omar about liking Avery. And he's thinking is like, no, like, don't waste your time on this straight woman,
Yeah, which, fair. It is like another queer experience, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But it is also hard because this is from Avery's point of view, and she obviously has trouble with people. Depression aside, I guess, ever since she's believed she's going to hell, she hasn't had a great time making friends.
Yeah.
Cass was like her first friend, and then other than that, it's just Peter, so rough out there for her. But Omar thing is fine. It makes sense. It's just
unfortunate what comes of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is the other thing I was gonna say, that I do feel like Cass can be a bit filterless, I suppose, when speaking with Avery. And like, there's the moments where it happens, maybe I can understand a little bit. Well, I understand the one more than the other. So one was like when she gets upset about her and her father kind of arguing about what's happening at the quince. I think we mentioned this scenario earlier. But the added point being like, she kind of just is like, you know what, Avery, like, you're too white to get it. And it's like, fine, I guess. But like, she's kind of mean about it. Like, that's not the end of the conversation. And Avery is really darn level-headed about the situation. She's like, I wish I had said this, but honestly, even the sitting in silence, I'm like, you handled it pretty well, because you could have gotten angry about it, about the way she was talking to you, and instead you were like, no, I'm just sad that I will never be able to understand that stuff, you know?
She definitely like lashes out.
Yeah.
I don't think Cass meant to be abrasive about it, and I do think there's something like it's enough that Avery can't solve the problem, but she's still there to support. Sometimes that is all you need, just like somebody to listen to you vent, kind of, but it is a bit like a slap in the face.
I was just gonna say, I can get the frustration of like, oh, it feels like Avery's trying to fix my problem when she can't do that, but like, you guys are in high school, like, you communicate that, you know?
Yeah, especially because Avery like dropped everything to come over to support you. So,
which is like not quite what she does when Avery calls her to say she came out to her family. And instead she's like kind of like, wow, like, rude of you to not tell me, instead of being supportive. And also, I'm out with like my girlfriend and this guy you don't like, so maybe we do this another time. It's like, oh my God.
Right. Somehow the coming out was made worse by the other gay person in her life. Like, it's crazy to me. Because she obviously calls and is like, came out to my parents. It was kind of a mess. And Cass must understand what like, Cass was there during the religion camp when her mom was like, you can still be saved. Like, obviously her parents don't like homosexuals. I don't know what to tell you. And the answer to that being rude and kind of dismissive, and then saying, you could come hang out with us, like, my kind of girlfriend that you don't really talk to, and my friend that you don't really get along with.
It's like the perfect place to be after an emotional situation.
Right. And it's kind of like, how much does Cass not understand Avery?
Yeah.
Which is the scary thing, right? Like, because they're supposed to be best friends, but how much of the mask that Avery puts on is also put on for Cass? And that's kind of going to be the scary part, I think, of the second half of this book, while they're seemingly dating, is how much is Avery going to act like she's okay and she's enjoying the moment with Cass while she wants to die the entire time. Like, I do think Cass, similar to Peter, knows Avery a lot, but I don't know. It's scary to think about.
I kind of get the angle of like, yeah, Avery's probably been, because she has a pattern of withholding in a way that prevents Cass from fully understanding her. But I just wish I saw Cass try a little bit more.
For sure. Absolutely.
And like, it feels imbalanced, and it doesn't feel, I mean, not that Avery cares, but it doesn't really feel fair to Avery how much care she has for Cass, and then Cass kind of like is a little bit more like nonchalant, like instinctive behavior response. Like, I get it, like, you're best friends, so you're comfortable, but I just feel like there's a degree of care that's missing.
Right, because the response to the coming out should have been, I mean, it kind of was like, do you need me? And if the answer is yes, but then she's like, oh, but I don't want to be around all those people. You drop the other people you're with.
Leave. Yeah.
You leave and you go be with the person that just went through something that was, I don't want to say traumatizing, but maybe a little bit.
Yeah,
like, this is a
right?
very big, this is a very big moment, and it could completely change her entire life depending on what she decides to do. And I don't know, for somebody who's been there for you the entire time, it's just, it is that imbalance you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I think it's because Avery has made it exceedingly easy to be around her.
For sure. There's some conditioning there.
Yeah, she has become, as I described, like, the nice girl in school, and she's kind of seen that way. Everybody seems to get along with her, and everybody seems to like her. And I think Cass has a little bit of jealousy about that. Like, I think...
Yeah, totally, especially with the invitation thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Omar kind of doesn't like Avery for a similar reason, is that everybody seems to like her. But it's because Avery has crafted herself into somebody who everybody will like. And... yeah, it's just sad that Cass, like, she obviously knows more of Avery, but even then, it's not like everything. Like, how could you not tell your friend didn't want to hang out with all these other people? And I guess there's some credit that needs to be given in the fact that you've just learned the girl you're in love with isn't straight, but in fact just does not like you. Yeah. That is the mindset Cass is probably having.
That's a good point.
Which makes sense, but also, that's your best fucking friend.
Yep.
I don't care if you're in love with them. You get your ass over there.
Right.
Like, what are you doing?
It's not about you. Yeah. No, she made it about her for sure, but it's not supposed to be.
Yeah. Tension.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it all works out. Who cares? They have some kind of fight because I think Avery kisses Cass and then is like, I hate you. The normal shit, you know?
I think she tries to kiss. I think they try to kiss, and she kind of says no.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, because they were like drunk.
Yeah, like Cass didn't want it to be emotionless.
Right. But that's all resolved, basically. Everybody is kind of at this bonfire. Even Tally's there for some reason, which we mentioned with the questions where everybody was. Afterwards, though, it's just Cass and Avery left, and I don't know how they get into it, but Cass does confess somehow. I think it's just like a spur of the moment, we're gonna die in like 8 days. I've been in love with you this whole time kind of situation, you know, as you would expect. And then they obviously kiss and do all that kind of nonsense, so.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
And I think it's maybe either right before or right after this scene that they mentioned that they're going to be sharing a bedroom in the bunker.
Right, yeah.
Which was just a beautiful, like, wow, they've already established that they're in love with each other, and now we're going to give them, there's only one bed.
For sure. Obviously, this is going to fucking change. The parents are not going to have this.
Yeah.
For sure. But it is pretty funny.
Yeah. But I was very happy to read this, though, that, like, Cass came out with it, because it did really feel like it would have been hard to get Avery to say something, you know?
For sure.
And there's, like, that sneaking suspicion throughout the book of, like, yeah, it seems like Cass probably loves her, too. It's just, it's got to come out. The thing that's supposed to, I think, push you against it is that Cass makes the comment of Avery not being her type, which actually really bothers Avery so much. But that's obviously, like, a deflecting tactic.
Yeah. I did like that we got this out of the way.
Yeah, me too. Me too. We didn't have to wait till the end.
Yeah, I wasn't sure we were going to have to wait to the end. And like, oh man, minutes till impact. I love you.
Yeah.
Like that kind of nonsense.
Exactly.
But no, we got it out of the way. Obviously, I think the main portion of this book is more so about Avery not wanting to live anymore, which is like awkward because she just got a girlfriend.
Right. With that, do we want to move to theories?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Kind of mentioned it. The second half of the book probably being more so about the suicidal mindset Avery has.
Yeah, there's probably gonna be some contending about that ideation with the romance, right? Like, as far as, because there's a little bit of when she picks up the phone call from Cass when she's at the lake or the river on campus, you kind of get the sense that the will to live is going to come from Cass, which is dangerous because that's fragile, right? So I kind of wonder if that's the kind of contending we're going to get into.
Yeah, it could go a bit into like curing.
Yeah, also dangerous. Yeah.
Will this love cure my depression? I don't know. I guess we'll see. I think the fact that we still have half a book to read means we won't go there, because I think their confession would have been way later if it was supposed to cure all of her problems.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think it's possible Avery might think it will. But do we want to get into specifics, I guess, before we get into like actual end of book
sure.
stuff?
Yeah. Some of the more detailed ones, yeah. There's one thing we didn't really mention earlier that I thought was important. There's a mention of a first aid kit being left outside of Peter and George's house, kind of in a disheveled manner. And it's pointed out especially because they're like looking to scavenge those sorts of materials. So it seems unusual that they'd leave such a mess of them out. So that implies that something has happened that we don't know about yet. And I'm not sure I like really have a specific thought of what's going on over in that house. The other thing that you could potentially pull from is the fact that when they take Teddy out, like it seems like they're in full panic in that house. And so it's hard to say what it is specifically, like what would have caused injury. The only other thing I'm thinking about is like the blood that was found on like a neighbor's lawn, which I think would be wild if that's what it were connected to, but that's the only other kind of like local violence we are privy to. So potentially a connection there, but I don't know. I feel like I've had a hard time like putting my hands on what I actually think is going to come of that, but something to look out for, I guess.
Yeah, because Peter and Georgia scream. Like,
yes.
They don't even wait for the car to pull away. They start screaming. And it could be to release tension. I think that's probably what it was, because they're not dead, seemingly. But I don't know. Georgia is an interesting character. I wouldn't be surprised if she was close to maybe being similar to Avery.
Yeah, I was wondering that too, yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's like a a self-harm type of
Mm-hmm.
situation, something like that. But that's a lot of assumptions on my part, so she just seems especially like frazzled by this entire
For
situation,
sure.
which makes sense. She has a little baby that she obviously wants to live, and her parents are in Brooklyn and have apparently never seen their
Yeah,
grandchild, which
it's
is kind of
interesting.
crazy to
Yeah.
me. Just take the trip. I don't
It's not that
understand.
far, actually. Yeah.
Not that far. So there's some, I feel like there's some family issues going on
Yeah.
there. But yeah, Georgia, maybe she'll be the mentor character. I don't know.
I mean, that'd be nice, but I'm kind of concerned on the same thing of like, yeah, of what she could be doing.
Yeah, for sure. I think for sure Avery's secret about her attempt will be revealed.
Yeah.
Aisha obviously knows because she read her own letter
Mm-hmm.
in like the car ride to Boston. It was like, it was addressed to me. Why would I not read it? And it turns out suicide note, awkward. So Aisha knows, but Aisha's also been helping her keep it a secret for now. But I think Tally's shown that she's lied about where she was when everything happened. Peter probably knows something happened. He seems to understand. Like, he knew Cass and Avery were in love since they were in high school. Like, he's understood the whole time. His text in response to Avery being like, I think I like Cass, was like, you just figured this
Right,
out,
like,
lol.
welcome back to Earth. Yeah.
Right, so crazy. So I wouldn't be surprised if they talked about it first. That does bring into question how the parents will react.
Yeah.
Are we going to have a religious shift at the end of the world? Could be, but it seems like a lot to cover.
Yeah, it depends
so
what
I'm
this
not
book is
sure.
trying to do. Yeah, I didn't really think about that as an option. I do think there's a version where the parents don't know, but they probably will. I think because I mean Aisha's really pushing it, right? Like she's like, I don't think Aisha's gonna say it, but I do really think she's gonna kind of put Avery into a corner where she kind of has to say something, in the hopes that she'll say it.
Right, because I feel like, again, we're at a weird line here where obviously it's not your secret to tell, but also if you see somebody who is in this mindset and was ready to attempt and possibly kill themselves, you kind of have to tell someone. Like, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
They obviously can't be entirely trusted with their own safety. Avery seems to be fine now, but also the world is going to end in 9 days. So what happens after that if they
Yeah.
do survive?
Mhm.
Like, what will Avery do after that? It's a lot of pressure
Yes.
to put one person under. But yeah, I don't think Aisha will say anything herself, but she definitely might not be as willing to help Avery lie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like maybe if somebody asked her directly, she might not lie about it, but I don't know. We'll see. Interesting.
Another thing I'm concerned about is like if this is gonna take, since we have the relationship established early enough in the book, if this is gonna take the romance arc of like they're gonna have like a little fight in the middle of this section of the book and have to like kind of come back together before the end. And I think that's like particularly extra scary with the thoughts of Avery potentially connecting her will to live to Cass. It's possible that if it's going for that structure, that the fight is actually done already and it's what happened in like when she went to visit New York and all that. But if not, then there maybe we can expect a little tiff.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a fight about the suicide attempt.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think it could be possible that Cass is the one that falls into this mindset. Like, stay alive for me. And puts a
Yeah,
lot of pressure
actually.
on them being happy together, quote unquote happy together. Like, why aren't you happy enough to live now that we're together? That could be a direction this goes.
I could see that for sure with Cass's character.
Yeah, especially because this has been Cass's dream since she met Avery when they were preteens, I guess, basically. So this is like the romance, right? Like, this is the romance you think about. Your best friend, you've been pining for ages, you finally get together. This is supposed to be the romance to end all romance. And the person you're with doesn't even want to live. Like, it could be a lot to deal with. But obviously, you should not, you shouldn't put all your will in one thing like this, because anything could happen.
Yeah, the only other direction I could see that going in is kind of just getting into an argument about like some other relationship thing. Like there was like some light tension about this girl, I think Daisy was her name, that was over the, Cass's place in New York as well. So I could see maybe some other like, because again, with Avery having been kind of withholding in the past and them not having been super open about relationshipy stuff, like Cass too, right? Like it's weird that Cass, despite Avery being Cass's best friend, Cass doesn't really let Avery in on her relationship super much.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have something to do with like a past withholding of information that causes tension as well.
I could also see an intentional fight on Avery's part to create distance between them.
That's true.
If she does a similar, like, I hate you type of situation. Yeah. Because, like, she does actually want to go through with killing herself. So she wants to create that distance. I could see that too.
Right. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
I feel like a fight is imminent, so.
Yeah. And then we kind of mentioned this one already a little bit, but what about, what will happen if the parents find out about Cass and Avery? Like, we're talking, like, trading room structure around. Like, is there going to be lectures? Like, I just can't imagine, like, the way that it's set up. The one bed. There's only one bed situation it's maintaining. Like, I wonder if they'll, like, make Aisha trade with Cass or something.
Yeah, I could see the parents thinking this is sinning at the end of the world. Like, you're doing something crazy because the world's ending.
Totally.
Like, you don't actually mean it. So they probably just will try to dismiss Avery's feelings.
Away, yeah.
Yeah, I could see something like that, which of course would cause an argument.
Yes. I also wouldn't be shocked if whatever argument comes out of that is what causes an argument between Cass and Avery. Not unlike the whole, when they were at church camp and Avery is like, I'm an ally, and Cass was like all upset about that, I'm
an ally, so crazy.
Yeah, like I can imagine Avery kind of saying something that comes off the wrong way.
Right, because this is an interesting way to flip the Cass saying to Avery, you'll never understand. Like, this family structure is something Cass will never understand. And Cass has gotten to be out as a lesbian basically her entire life. For Avery, it is very different.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like a parallel of that disagreement.
Yeah.
And maybe because Cass is a bit more abrasive, a little bit, instead of like patient acceptance, which is what Avery gives, we kind of see an argument fuel from that.
Could be a little more, you don't understand.
Yeah. And then, of course, the big question. What will happen at the end of this book? I see 3 possible endings. They live. Great. This, I guess, could split in 2 different directions in which the asteroid is able to be powered down, quote unquote.
Right. Stopped
a little bit so it's not as destructive. Or they do enter into their eternal winter and they have to live like that. Crazy. End of a book, I suppose, but it's possible. And then, of course, the other one is they all die, which is crazy to end a book like that. But I guess. And then the third, which we have history with, is we don't get to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the most likely. I think it's somewhere between we don't get to see it and they live, in that if they live, there's nothing we would see about it. I just can't imagine. I don't know what the end of the book would look like if they live. Like without, like with us knowing that, like mentioning that the asteroid is being deflected or whatever it is. It feels like that. I'm not sure that there would be a good, satisfying ending there. I think you might as well at that point not be super clear about it. On the other hand, though, like if the asteroid is going to crash into Earth, we're probably certainly going to know that. We're just not going to see what comes of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say, I think there have been hints that they're trying to deflect or deal with the asteroid in some way. So it's possible we might get more hints of that happening. And then it's possible the impact might just either not happen or be so minuscule it doesn't actually cause that much damage, at least to where they are.
Damn, imagine like it effectively they dissipate, the threat, and then they have to like go on remembering like how everyone acted a fool and it didn't happen.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, I could see that because I think that's the scariest way for this book to go for Avery.
Yeah.
Is if things do get better.
Right. Having to confront life or death again, basically, if she wants to die. Yeah.
Right. So that might be actually quite interesting. Because we would expect it's awful ending. Like they die or I don't think they'll actually die. I don't think that's a possible ending. But like with a story like this, that's what you might expect. Like the bad ending to happen, right? But I think the bad ending for Avery is the living part.
Is the living, yeah.
So that might just be an interesting way to conclude the plot, maybe. Maybe, I don't know.
I guess, yeah, I could see a few of these. I'm going to put my vote in for we don't get to see it and there's no clear deflection of the asteroid.
I'm going to put it in for They Live. I think that would be the most interesting and unexpected way for this book to go.
I just can't see that being the ending unless we're gonna get some like post-credit scenes.
Yeah. I do think, like, the hope-wise, it can fit with the we don't see it ending, which is, I feel like it's the expected ending, though, when you deal with circumstances such as these, and you want to have the hopeful ending, but you don't actually know how to clear-cut end the book. You do a, will it be okay?
Yeah.
We have hope. We have faith, right? We have faith. That kind of ending. It would, I guess, also fit, but boy, would it be interesting if my idea works out.
I agree.
From a writing perspective, I think it would be super interesting.
Well, I almost am curious. I know that this book probably won't go there at all, but I'm kind of curious what the author thinks the world would look like after the impact. Like, I know we get to talk about like winter and stuff like that, but like I kind of wonder, and like when I say the world, I mean these characters too, of like what would like bunker life be like for this crew, you know? I know that probably doesn't like write a great book, but I'd be curious.
Yeah, that is something to take into consideration, though. Like, how do you end a book with an after like that if they do end up in winter?
Yeah.
Because do you just time cut? I mean, I guess you could, but that would be kind of cheating, I think. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like no crazy theories, though.
Yeah. I got the sense reading through this that there was gonna be a whole lot of concrete stuff to theorize on, but not nothing though. There's some thoughts.
The notes always look sparse, but
I know.
Boy, do we talk a lot.
I mean, this was for context, about 3 pages of notes, right? Not even. Other times we have like 4 to 6 pages and record for the same amount of time.
Right. There's just a lot of heavy topics in this book.
Yeah. We were able to get into some more abstract conversation too.
Yeah. So as always, if you have your own thoughts and theories, it's 5050_books on Twitter. Yes, we still call it Twitter, because it is Twitter. Obviously, next episode, we're finishing up this book, and that's that. I had nothing else to say.
Bye-bye.
Bye.